I run SEDA Land, which is the bit that looks at rural Scotland and how to regenerate that environmentally and ecologically, economically and ecologically. So looking at jobs in the area too. So very much related to this session and this fair, and that is why there is quite an emphasis on rural jobs here. Rural jobs are generally not, I don't think they're very well represented at fairs, and there's a lot of interesting stuff going on. And as I've said several times, being a farmer doesn't mean wallowing in pig manure only, that you might do that, but there are a lot of other aspects of it. You know, in every one of these jobs, you've got policy, communication, strategy, human resources, R&D. That it's not. So please, you know, I'm hoping that this fair will try and get rid of any preconceptions you might have of some sectors. And so very deliberately around the table, I'm getting people from different sectors. So if you came in thinking you want to be a lawyer, you might come out thinking that you want to be a food nutritionist or something. So this one is I don't want a desk job, and as Adrian so perfectly said, well, obviously anyone that doesn't want a desk job isn't going to be here, are they? They're going to be outside. We should have held this in a field, but we haven't, so thank you for coming, for those who have. It's being recorded, it's going to be available, all the panel sessions will be available on our website. So do, you know, go back, if you haven't made the other ones, do look at them, because I've had different speakers talking about different things at each one, and there's such a range of fantastic people who have been speaking. All of these people are genuinely ecological, they're all passionate about what they want, what they do. So yes, I don't want a desk job, and before that, yeah. If I press this to the wrong one and keep going back and forth, it's because my computer freezes if I don't touch it regularly, and I can't touch it without it moving on, so it's a bit jiggery-pokery, just please ignore that. So the first, this is no particular order, it's who came back to me first, saying that they could appear, so thank you all for coming. We'll start with Adrian Loening, who founded and runs Mór Hydro, and he's done several things in the renewable energy sector, but is now specialising in hydro. So, Adrian.
Well, I have to say, I'm just about that close to retirement now. But you know, my objective here is to pass on a little bit of experience of my life in engineering to people who are just starting their life, and in, of course, being an engineer, particularly in engineering. So I graduated from Mór Hydro University in 1985. Yes, I had to go at doing a PhD in solar refrigeration, never completed that because I got sidetracked into the world of biogas, surprisingly, which I'm not here to talk about, but I did spend 22 years working around the world capturing methane, which, by the way, is far more important in climate change than carbon dioxide is. Did they tell you that at university? They should have done. And then stumbled into the hydro industry. So you can press a button there and see what happens. Built this small hydro scheme on the west coast of Scotland, 500 kilowatts, 2.3 gigawatt hours a year. That's something like enough to run 700 or 800 houses in Scotland, and it's still running today. And I became fascinated with the hydro industry because it's an ancient technology. It's been around since the 16th century, largely, and yet it fits the modern world and it fits the modern grid and energy demand. So that's where I started. Didn't actually know that much about hydro, but I had built a lot of power stations before that. You can hit the button again. Went on to build a second scheme. Happens to be on a very nice hillside in Perthshire with people walking around it. It's right on the core path network, so we built this nice building that you could look in, and it has a display, tells you what the hydro is doing, and that was commissioned 15 years ago. And you can press again, maybe. And then other schemes like a restoration of a 1920s scheme Finlaston, just outside Glasgow, putting in new turbines there, but using the old infrastructure. We redeveloped a 1920s building. We used the old weir that was there, and that turbine now powers a local grid running all the estate and cottages and canteen and a restaurant and offices there. You can press again. Oh, I didn't know it did that. There you go. Okay, try again. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know that's playing.
Don't know. Maybe if you press again, something will happen. Yeah, sort of. I've had a very varied career, coming from the biogas world into the hydro world, and I've always been a very practical engineer. I can't sit behind a desk for terribly long. I can do a day or two doing things like conceptual design of weirs. Nice picture here of one that I did some years ago. Press again, I can't remember what I put on there. But I also really liked the practical side, actually going out, project managing, getting dirty, putting my hand on spanners, and I think I would have gone a bit stir crazy if I hadn't been able to do that. And you know, some days you come back off site soaking wet and filthy and dirty, but with a great sense of achievement. Oh, there we are. And so that's you know where I went, and I founded my own company on that general ethos that everybody that I, although I'm now at the end of my career, everybody that I ever employed, everybody that I worked with, had to have opportunities to do a little bit of everything in the company. I didn't really want people who just had one speciality. I design this particular widget and that's all I do. I do this software and that's all I do. Everybody had to be practical, everybody had to be responsive to what our clients wanted, and be prepared to go out and work some pretty long and pretty hard hours sometime. The result of that is the development of real renewable energy systems for our clients and for ourselves that produce power and community benefit. It's been a very interesting career doing that. But I very much see myself as a nuts and bolts engineer rather than a design engineer. But having said that, I also spent a time as a chairman of our trade association, the British Hydropower Association. I've interfaced with politicians. We had John Swinney opening one of our schemes, so varied is the word. But could I sit at a desk for 2 weeks on end? Absolutely not a chance. I think that's me. Please feel free to ask questions.
Thank you, Adrian. And yeah, we'll do Q&A at the end, everyone. So an engineer and an entrepreneur. We've had a lot of entrepreneurs in the session before and talked about how easy or difficult that is. But one thing I'd just like to sort of reinforce is that ecology is not just about the environment, it's about people. And so this is a lovely example. You'll notice quite a lot of the people here talk about communities as well as a green, healthy environment and tackling climate change and biodiversity loss, etc. A lot of the people here do work with community groups because that's as important to them as saving the environment. And that's a lovely example from Adrian with his community hydro schemes. So the next person is Adam Forrest, who is a farmer. But interestingly, we had a farmer before talking, but I've sort of asked Adam to maybe as well as talk about the day job within the manure. Also, he has talked about, he has worked for the Scottish Food and Drink, so the large-scale food industry as well. So I think it'd be quite interesting to hear a bit of both perspectives, if we may, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Hi, everyone. So I don't have any slides. I'm going to wing it. I'm just going to try and keep my explanation of what I set out to do before I started university and what I've ended up doing now. I'm going to try and keep that short. And just explain that journey. So before I started university, I took 5 gap years, and I did lots of different things. I worked as I worked in demolition for a bit, and that's quite fun. But yeah, I wanted to work outside. So I didn't say I don't want a desk job. I said I want to be outside as much as possible. And something that I started doing before university, which has served me really well in the career that I've had since then, was start a business called Wild and Scottish. And we harvested wild sea buckthorn berries and made juice out of it. And we did that on a very seasonal, micro basis. We picked berries through the winter, and we sold them to some pretty high-end restaurants and shops. And that kind of supported me in doing other work as well. I worked a lot in care work actually as I went into university. I studied, because I wanted to be outside, I studied environmental resource management at the Agricultural College in Edinburgh, and I thought that'll take me into something where I can be outside. It was great to have the business on the side while I was studying, because I could focus a lot of my projects on the business and thinking about environmental management through this lens of a little micro food company. So that was really great. And when I finished university, I had done a lot around kind of the food industry and farming and land use. And I actually ended up taking a graduate job in a food company called Stokes Porridge, and I worked with them in sales actually. So I worked in really commercial roles with them, but it was a real eye opener. Seeing how the whole kind of supermarket system works, working with wholesalers, seeing how kind of food service works, seeing this kind of big food industry in action, and how you actually get into it and sell a product and kind of build a successful business. Now, I was doing that for a while, I was kind of out and about a bit, but I wanted to get back to that kind of environmental management and get back to the land a little bit. So I took a job as a farm manager. So I'm not actually a farmer at the moment, so I'm going to correct you on that, but I was a farm manager for a few years for a small market garden, an organic market garden on the outskirts of Edinburgh. And essentially my job was to run the business of a social enterprise farm. And that was one of the most formative experiences of my life, because I was managing people, volunteers, a business which was losing £80,000 a year actually for a charity, a homelessness charity, and they were thinking about how do we make this a social enterprise that kind of feeds money back into the business. Anyway, we decided it shouldn't necessarily be a business, it shouldn't necessarily be a social enterprise, it should be a rural skills centre. So we started that journey, and we were thinking about getting young people into land-based industries. So as I say, very formative experience. It's a whistle-stop journey. The next job I took after that, because it was an organic farm I'd been working at and I'd had this commercial kind of food experience, was with Scotland Food and Drink. So that's the industry body in Scotland for food and drink, and they're tasked with setting out the strategy for food and drink in this country. And so they do really interesting work. They support small businesses, medium-sized businesses, large businesses to grow, and they're really focused on growth. My job there was to support organic food and drink businesses. It was the first job that they'd ever had that was focused on organic food and drink and growing organic food and drink. So it was super interesting, and did that for a few years. I was funded by the Scottish Government to do that. The Scottish Government had a target, has a target still in place, to double the amount of organic farmland. And you need, if you're going to grow the amount of organic farmland, you're going to grow the amount of organic stuff, you need to make sure there's a market for that stuff to sell. You need to make sure there's supply chains in place to support the growth of that farmland. So that was the job. And then coming from there, I've ended up where I am now, which is working for the Nature Friendly Farming Network. And I just want to make a couple of statements about farming and what we've been talking about today at the stand when students have been coming over. I set out wanting to be outside, wanting to work outside, and what I've learned across that journey, working through all these kind of food businesses, working in farming, working with people who are coming into a farming environment, is it's so important. You know, if you want to make an impact on climate change, land, farming and food is a really, really good place to start. If you want to make an impact on health, we need to think about food. We need to think about our food environment. We need to think about how connected we are to food and how we grow, produce, market good food. So, you know, we want to get young people, we want to get everyone excited about food and farming and consider coming into roles that are supporting us to move to a more sustainable way of producing food, more sustainable way of farming, and we need all sorts of people in this space. We need people who are influencing policy, we need business people, we need scientists to be thinking about how to do this, and love for you guys to get excited about food and farming.
Thank you, Adam. And yeah, sort of, if you haven't already visited the Food and Farming Stand, well, actually they're running workshops, so they're back and forth, but there's Lorna Dawson, Head of Soil at James Hutton Institute, and Wendy Russell, Head of Nutrition at Rowe Institute, and they are absolutely digging up worms one day, but then they're in the lab doing research the next, and completely committed to everything that Adam's been saying. I've noted down 5 years. I did 4. You've beaten me. But also quite interesting, Adam's actually moving on to work for an organisation that looks at cooperatives, and I think that's quite an interesting counter to the big. I mean, we are not anti-big industry at SEDA, but generally the things we look at tend to be small scale. Big doesn't have to be evil, but in terms of the food industry, it is. And so what Adam's going on to do will counter that by having cooperatives, so again collectively trying to tackle be a competitor to the big food for. Jason, I don't. Are you next on my list? Yes, you are, because I have to. No, Edward. In case we've got slides. So Edward is the sort of Forrester today. So he's from COM4, which is the leading forestry body in Scotland and Scottish Woodlands, and what have I? Complex, diverse. Yes, you'll tell us all about it. Thank you.
Hello. I feel like that was quite a tough 2 acts to follow of people that have done quite a lot in their career so far. I'm relatively, I'd like to think I'm still broadly at the start of my career. And yes, as you said, that I work for a company called Scottish Woodlands, and we're a firm based in Edinburgh, and we predominantly manage forestry in Scotland on behalf of a variety of landowners. And we're concerned with the management of existing woodlands, where we manage big forests that you'll see when you're in and around Scotland, and also woodland creation projects. So we help implement new woodland creations, which is part of the Scottish Government strategy to create new woodlands. So I've been doing this for 4 years, and I manage a small team based just outside of Glasgow, and the area that I cover is sort of southwest Scotland from Glasgow south. We find that forestry is often misunderstood as an industry. We find that we're quite bad as an industry at sort of promoting what we're doing. What we're doing, we think, is really good work and has a really positive impact on the environment and the people around us. And COM4, which I don't work for COM4, but I'm out here today with COM4, we're trying to promote the understanding of forestry as an industry. So I've spoken to quite a lot of people today on that subject. Cool, I think that's me. I know it's a bit shorter, but it's commensurate with my length of my career so far.
That's all right.
We don't want just old fogies, so it's great. You know, I'm sure you can relate much better to the audience than something like I can. And now a nice link. I'll be the link between these two, because I'm an architect, as I may have said, and I specify natural materials and local where possible. And we, with my SEDA land hat on. We're really trying to promote the use of local Scottish timber in our buildings, which Jason actually then builds with. It's incredibly important. We import 70% of our timber at the moment. I mean, that's just scandalous. It's ridiculous. And we have the most depleted hillsides. So Jason is a builder and done some beautiful buildings with timber and natural materials. And certainly as an architect, I learn it's very much a two-way system. I learn from people like Jay. I haven't had the pleasure of working with you, but the people I do work with, it is very much a two-way thing of learning, because you know so much about all the materials and how to put them together. So over to Jason.
Hello everyone, I'm Jason Caddy. I'm Director of Green Design and Build. We're a construction design and build firm up in the north of Scotland, up in the Park Eco Village, Fintorn. I've been doing it for 18 years now. I left school and ran for the hills. I was like, basically, I want to go travel the world and learn from going out and seeing what other people are doing. So that was very much my education, the University of Life. It brought me back to Fintorn after many years of traveling abroad, because I was very interested in eco-village living. I wanted to learn about sustainable homes and how they were constructed. And so I actually attended a course called the Eco-Village Training, which trained people in all of the pillars of community. So it was all to do with not just the houses, but the whole framework of housing and community, economics, energy, the whole package basically. And alongside of that was quite a lot to do with sustainable energy systems and how houses perform and are built. And so I actually joined a construction firm to get that experience to build houses with my hands, and that led me to want to explore more information. And I went to Centre of Alternative Technology for some time to explore wind energy and hemp building and various other things, meeting a lot of people along the way. So it was quite an enjoyable experience, and I got paid to learn. So that also led towards trying to find a way of holding information. So starting a company was the natural next step, which was to try and figure out how to bring in all this information into one place so that we could refine it and develop it into the future and not lose touch with what is actually the feedback coming from the builders with the hands-on experience, so we could actually have control over ways of detailing out construction so that it's most effective in the way that we're building, and it could also be economically delivered at a price that others can afford. So here's some slides here of some of the projects that we've been involved in recently, which has obviously been a culmination of our experience, where we're using multi-unit terraces to save on cost of the construction, but also to focus some of the resources at the front of these houses to be a shared resource by the community. This is using rainwater for the roof to store into a swimming pond, which then becomes an amenity, so you're actually able to use that water for not just biodiversity, but also for the enjoyment of the people that are living there. And we're also looking at ways of creating social spaces, so pizza ovens and greenhouses and shared raised beds places to meet and to grow food together. So that's been something that has been a byproduct of many years of refinement and trying to bring in some of these design concepts into the construction and the conceptual design, so that you can actually link up the thinking and have it work on a bigger scale. And our most recent development is this slide here, which is actually 16 houses. It's a co-housing development. It's also focused on shared energy infrastructure, so they have district heating and a microgrid attached to their home, so they're 1/16 owners of a co-housing cooperative, and that means that each house has ownership over their energy generation equipment and distribution, and can make choices on upgrading that and administrating that, which puts power into the people's hands. So this is one of the things that I would say is one of the most important aspects of our quest for a more sustainable future, is people understanding what energy is and how it works. And it's not just the performance of your home, but it's also being able to work together and have a common interest to achieve this.
Thank you, Jason. And gosh, if you haven't been to Finhorn, do go and visit it up in the northeast of Scotland, because it is an exemplar of, well, there are some big houses, but the sort that you do are affordable houses made of natural local materials. It's fantastic and affordable because they are co-housing, they're sharing. You know, why do we all need a laundry each? How often do you use your washing machine? Have a shared laundry? How often? A guest room. You don't have to have 5 bedrooms. You could have 3 and then have communal guest rooms. This is something that SEDA is really pushing for. Weren't they wonderful, those buildings? Wouldn't you like to live in one of those instead of these ghastly noddy houses being built by Wimpy and Carla and etc.? These are beautiful houses to be in, not just aesthetically, but also health-wise. They don't give you asthma, etc., etc. So, you know, yes, there's such a need of expertise to come into this sector and really try and grow it. So now we have Lana Reid McConnell, and thank you for you're the politician represented on all the panels. You're the only politician, and I'm delighted that we do, because we have to have regulation to change things, because we're doing it from grassroots a lot, but we need more regulation. So, you know, I'm delighted that there is a politician here, because it's so difficult to get people into politics now because everyone's so disillusioned. So tell us the good story, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I hadn't really fully prepared something to say, so I'll try and meander through the last 13 years and obviously pick up on what you've just said there as well. So my background isn't in politics. I started off by doing a chemical engineering degree, finished that about 10 years ago. For me at the time, the job fairs were quite limited. It was the oil and gas industry or the whisky industry, and neither of them really took my fancy. So I ended up doing a master's in sustainable engineering at Strathclyde, which was focusing on renewable energy systems. But that was my kind of first introduction to. They had classes about policy and the ethics of sustainability and just the broader topic and how it interacts with the world and what we were doing with renewable energy systems. So for me, that kind of sparked my initial interest in policy. I then went on to get a job doing sort of product design sustainability consulting, which was working with engineers and product designers to try and make different recommendations around how to make things more sustainable, but then also started working a little bit with different policy bodies as well. It was kind of, I can't remember, maybe this was like 6, 7, 8 years ago now, when businesses were really starting to see the value of taking action in sustainability and obviously marketing their products as such. So that was kind of meanwhile doing all of this. I just kind of the first time I made touch with the Green Party was when I was doing my masters. I, with some friends, organised a feminist evening of talks, which was to hear from women that were from a range of different career backgrounds, and one of them was my local councillor at the time in Denstone. So she came along, she talked about her journey into politics and what her role kind of entailed as a local councillor. And just offered, did anybody want to come out campaigning, door knocking with her? So I'll offer the same to everybody in the room. And it was through a couple of sessions door knocking with her and getting to chatting and really understanding, what do the Scottish Greens care about? A lot of it is climate justice, a lot of it is social justice, economical justice, and just trying to push for policies and action on a local and national level, obviously in that case on a local level, to try and push for those aims. So kind of gradually joined the party, and meanwhile I was doing this sustainability consulting role that I was talking about. I was doing a bit of comm stuff, a bit of helping with campaign organising, and it was a fairly low stakes way of getting to know more about the party and getting to know some of the people that were in the party. And then about 6 months before the local council elections, there was they needed somebody to stand in a particular ward, which I thought, okay, why not? I can do that. I've been involved in the party for long enough. I really care about what's happening locally. So that's the past 3.5 years. I've been a councillor in Glasgow City Council, and the role is so varied. We do have some desk job work, so lots and lots of emails, so supporting constituents with a variety of issues, and that could be to do with local infrastructure that's maybe public transport, or active travel related, or what's happening in parks, so local environment, really local environmental issues, or it could be housing or social care or whatever else. One of the other sides of it is everybody kind of has their own policy portfolio. So for me, one of mine is climate, and through that I get to chair the local, the Glasgow's it's such a long name, Net Zero and Climate Progress and Monitoring Committee. So through that committee we see a lot of the work that's happening to try and get Glasgow to become net zero as our target for 2030. So we talk about stuff like community renewable energy, trying to support that in the city, implementing of heat networks, rolling out cycle lanes, the low emission zone, biodiversity. So it covers such a range of topics, and it's really it's very interesting, and it's, I guess, both probably from a council perspective, and I imagine working for Glasgow City Council, it's great to be able to kind of actually walk around the places that you're talking about and you're engaging in your work. You're actually making a difference in your city, in the place that you live. Another role that I do, because the council job is paid part-time unfortunately, is I work for an MSP. So there's also roles to work for MSPs. They tend to have bigger teams of, you could be a research developer, or you could be a research assistant on a certain portfolio, or you could be dealing with casework, or just general kind of communications. A lot of the job, I guess, going back to kind of maybe why it's not really a desk job, I spend half of my time on the laptop, dealing with reading papers and responding to emails, but I'm also out at a lot of community council meetings or local organisation meetings, or there's community trusts for the local parks, and helping to start initiatives. Like there's more and more interest these days for local growing projects, or there's an identified need for an improved cycle route or active travel kind of. So there's basically loads of local campaigns, but also citywide campaigns that are really great to get involved with and support. And I guess it's amazing because through that you also get in touch with. There's a lot of people in this city that really care and really share a lot of our values, so I hope that's given you a little bit of an overview of the different things that I do in my role. And if anybody does want to try their hand out campaigning, do let me know.
Thank you very much, Lana. Now I hope that some of you will now go into politics. We need them. So last, Ailey Geddes, who works for veterinary medicine, and on the questionnaires we sent out, you were the only person that said that one of the skills you need is a good sense of humour. So I rather like that. So I'd like to know what is so funny about veterinary medicine.
Thanks. So I'm a postdoctoral research scientist at Mór Hydro Research Institute. So I'm not a vet, disclaimer. I'm a vet scientist. I kind of came into it from a kind of vet science job, but essentially, maybe next slide. So I work at Mór Hydro, which promotes livestock health and welfare through research and education, and we've never really had much of a desk job. So the next slide, this is how Mór Hydro started. In the 1920s, it was a mobile lab. It was a group of farmers that developed a mobile lab and went round to solve diseases in sheep, because the farmers were like, why are our sheep dying? So that's how Mór Hydro started, and we're touring the country and also providing education, knowledge exchange events, and feeding our research back to the stakeholders who, at the end of the day, this research is actually for. So I've taken an approach of showing you all the things in my job that are not at a desk. So essentially, I do work in the lab. When I was doing my undergraduate degree, I thought, man, I never want to work in a lab ever. But here we are. And actually, you know what? I didn't give it enough credit because I do a variety of different things. So there's a picture in the bottom right there, or bottom right, of me speaking to the finance gods from the Scottish Government, who got a great education on parasitology that day. I'm not sure they want to come back, but that's on them. And in the middle there is some of the mites, which is what I work on. I work on a disease called sheep scab. But we do all sorts of things at Morden to promote the health and welfare of animals, and that obviously has climate implications as well, in terms of reducing disease burden, which reduces emissions as well, and promoting biodiversity. Yeah. So we also do a lot of field trials. I work on the farm a lot. So the top picture there is one of our big field trials working with sheep and looking at the impact of different grazing strategies on parasites. Then we've got some of our vet team looking at some of our animals that are involved in a trial, and then milking cows as part of a mastitis trial, which is a bacterial infection that impacts dairy herds. Try the next slide. Thanks. We also go out and about doing our research, so we're not just limited to the lab. So that top left picture there is Lewis and Harris, where we did a sheep dipping project, which is a treatment for the disease that I work on, sheep scab. It was a community project where over the course of like 6 weeks they dipped over 30,000 animals, which is pretty much every sheep on Lewis and Harris. So as part of a sheep scab control initiative, which has been running for the last 3 years and promoted a lot of community benefits as well, and really brought together the rural community after COVID. A lot of the kind of newer crofters and that were saying how much it was really nice to work with their neighbours like they had done and their fathers had done before them. The bottom picture there is a couple of farmers learning how to do a fecal egg count, which is one of the ways we help to quantify parasites to help farmers decide whether they actually need to treat for them. That was part of my PhD project. And then the other photo there is doing some focus groups for an app that I developed to help farmers be able to interpret the results of these diagnostic tests to inform whether they need to give treatments or not. And we also do a lot of outreach with stakeholders. So we now have a new bus in the bottom left corner that we got for our centenary in 2020. Fortunately, it didn't get much use in 2020. But we did eventually manage to get it out and about, and I think it's got about 12,000 miles on it now. It has gotten some sticky situations. I've only got it stranded once, and yeah, I mean, you said about having a good sense of humour. You know, I work a lot with sheep poo, and I also go out and do these activities, and we joke that at Morden you can never go out about and have an adventure without coming back with a story to tell, and that has been quite true. Virtually every time the last show I did, I managed to get that bus stuck on a feed pass, a cattle feed pass, off a curb that was about this tall, but apparently that's about this much more than the bus's clearance. But anyway, we go and talk to primary school children, different stakeholders, politicians and policymakers, you know, future scientists, people who really connect with this research. And we get to go and do some fun conferences too. Last month I was in Brazil at the World Association for the Advancement of Veterinary Parasitology conference, where I got to meet some capybaras. We get to drink nice wine, nice food in various places. I went to Canada to look at their sheep production and how they deal with parasites, because they have slightly different parasite profile. And I ended up giving a talk to 100 producers and vets in the Ontario region, some of whom had travelled over 5 hours to listen to me talk, which I thought was, you know, I'm not sure why, but yeah, so there's a lot of travel also involved with this sort of career, and it can take you a lot of places. I do kind of international collaborations with people from all over the world. The hardest part about that is trying to get a meeting that suits everyone that isn't at 3 a.m, but you know, that's the sort of things we do, and those international collaborations are really, really interesting and often have really good benefits for everyone involved. You know, we do a lot of knowledge exchange and knowledge sharing of like impact things that those farmers have maybe implemented on their farms that might work for us, because you know, they might be further ahead in some ways where we aren't, and actually that knowledge sharing can bring us, you know, things to help our production as well that I think, you know, we need to be more in touch with, and not just look into ourselves, but actually open our network to think about what other solutions are out there. So yeah, I think that's about me. And oh yeah, and a nice picture. And if you ever have a bad day at Morden, you can go and cuddle some piglets. So
Thank you, Ailey, that was great. All the scientists I speak to travel the world, so you can't travel the world to become a scientist. There's a lot of collaboration, which is fantastic, and as it should be. Brexit slightly scuppered some of that, but it's still there.
Making it work.
Yeah, it's good, well done. And seeing that beautiful picture of Lewis, I think it was, by the loch. Edward's, one of your comments was the beautiful scenery. I think you're the only one that mentioned that. And yeah, you know, who wouldn't want to be working outside with the scenery that we have in Scotland? You know, my God, it's just to be outside in that all day must be, or some of the day must be great. Any questions or any observations? And there's no such thing as a stupid question, by the way, because I think a lot of people are maybe a bit shy and don't want to ask something, but all of the people in this panel would say that, and we've all got where we are because we ask stupid questions. You need to ask questions, and there is no such thing as a stupid one. Great.
What does everyone think the biggest issue is in land today?
Oh, big question. I'll just repeat that for the recording. What's the biggest issue in land? Who wants to take that on? My goodness.
Take it. Well, in Scotland, a lot of land is just owned by a few people, and so if you have a community that comes together and buys that land, is one of the things that's been going on at the Western Isles, as well as what you can do when you're working together, so the resource of many can help to benefit the all. And I think we're talking about resource management. So I think the thing that we have, the most precious thing is our resources, and that includes land, energy, the things that we grow, all of that together is all part of the land. We are part of the land. So if we can share that and use that as a resource effectively, I think that is one of our biggest challenges. And I think that's kind of a shared aim through all the different speakers here today, is like, how do we manage this land effectively, efficiently? How do we get access to it? How do we make it most efficient in its resource? Because obviously you can have a lot of land doing not very much. So if we can manage that in a way that brings a lot of resources together in one place and makes it beneficial for the people, that would be probably the biggest challenge we could overcome. And what a beautiful world we'd live in if that was the case everywhere.
Thanks, yeah. I'd like to share something that we work with farmers on a daily basis, and something that a farmer shared with me was, well, we produce food. We've been asked to produce food, and we're doing that. And now we're being asked to do so much more. We have to do something about climate change, and we have to save the world and make sure that we're protecting nature. We're doing this and we're doing that, and we just want to produce food now. The challenge is that we are asking so much of people that manage the land, because it's the key to solving so many of our, big challenges on this planet. And there's a small number of people who own and manage the land, particularly in this country, and we are asking a lot of them. But unfortunately, we have to ask a lot of them, and the kind of the process that actually a number of them go through to sort of realise that is challenging. It's challenging for us to walk with people to understand that, but also to get the government to understand that the things we're asking for from the land are public goods that we need to pay for. We can't just expect landowners and farmers to necessarily just do them because we understand we need to do them. We do need to pay for them, and we do need to make sure that there is this supported kind of mindset shift, so that these good things can happen.
Thank you, Adam. And just to add a statistic, I can't remember it's 70 or 80%, but a really high proportion of arable land in Scotland is used for either feedstock for cattle, so it's not going directly to food, it's feeding cattle to feed us, or for the barley for the whisky industry. So that's not a great distribution of good use of land in my view. I mean, whisky is obviously a big earner for Scotland, so government don't want to stop that. I would certainly say we should be eating less meat so that some of that land could be used for. I mean, you can feed far more people on less land if you're a vegetarian. I'm not advocating vegetarianism, but eat less meat, and that meat should be farmed regeneratively. I mean, there's a discussion to be had there whether we should be vegetarian or not, but I'm not a George Monbiot fan on that. He's great in many ways, but I think he's got it wrong on the meat question. But yes, gosh, big debate, and it's something SEDA Land discusses a lot. Any other questions or observations, or just some practical questions about people's career, what you should be doing, or anything?
I've got a question for you, Ms. Fraser. I keep helping you out on these panels, asking questions.
Yes. Yeah.
When will you
You're a roadie.
We'll negotiate a wage, perhaps, for your free dinner. I have a question actually for the politician. I'm studying physics. I think Angela Merkel is a physicist.
I'm going to give you this if it's a long question.
She's a very different type of politician, I assume, with you. There's many different types of politicians. So I'm guessing asking as a physicist, but also generally, what sort of skills, you're a chemical engineer, also STEM, I'm thinking, what sorts of skills in my career or others are uniquely or unexpectedly good for politicians, given that you're STEM?
Did you hear that, Tom? Yeah.
Thanks, and thanks for the question. I guess, one of the, and what I kind of wrote down, it's just like, I feel like engineers are good problem solvers, and people who do science, in general, we're good problem solvers, we're curious, we're passionate, and you don't obviously need to do those subjects to be all of those things, but I think that sort of reigniting the passion and the curiosity and the determination is and being able to kind of reignite that in the world of politics consistently is quite a big thing, and I think like what this role for me is, you kind of especially in a local government context, when you're dealing with such a variety of casework, you kind of need to be a master of like a lot of things, or not a master of a lot of things, but a general kind of have a general knowledge base of a lot of different stuff, and just sort of like be able to kind of gather the tools to problem solve and work towards dealing with issues, but also like I guess fighting for improved systems and being able to envision that better world. So obviously you can't do that alone. So another really big quality I think is relationship building and team working and understanding different strengths of different people, and just kind of being able to collaborate together. But I think that the point of politics is we don't just want people that come from a political background or a policy background. There's absolutely merits in having that kind of base of study as well, but it's really important that we have people with loads of different either working backgrounds or studying backgrounds that are bringing their ideas and their knowledge into those spaces that are creating the policy, whether it is on a city level or on a national level. So I think don't feel like you might not fit the mould of what a politician is, as you kind of said in your question. It's like they come in so many different shapes and forms, and actually they should come in more different shapes and forms. So hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Lana. And that sort of fits in with actually the way the last panel session ended, with quite a long discussion about what are the qualities you need and such like. And in every panel session, passion, curiosity, problem solving, teamwork, communication skills, they all keep coming up again and again and again. And it seems like the employers that were in the last session were saying they would choose someone with those over and above someone that had the right qualifications. Now, I can't quite get my head around that, because I have a child who's here at the moment as a volunteer who's trying to get a job, and he can never get past the stage of sending in a CV and never getting to the interview stage to show he's passionate. So I do understand that is a hurdle. I don't know if anyone wants to address that. I mean, it's smaller outfits, I guess they can get to you straight away, the students, so you know straight away who's good, and whether is it true, would you say, that you go for someone with the right attitude rather than the qualification?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have a little story about this. My youngest son's girlfriend was applying for a job, got to an interview stage, got to the last interview stage, didn't get the job because they said, oh, you haven't got enough experience. And it's like, but you've read my CV. My CV shows you what my experience is. Why did you bother inviting me to an interview? You know, and smaller companies are so much better at that than big companies, and that's why I spent 1 year in my life working for a very big company, absolutely hated it, and that's why, because so if you're here at I don't want a desk job, well, smaller companies is where you want to go because they can see past that sort of thing. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, so we do a work trial for a week or two, and then we see if it integrates with the team, because team is everything. So if you have one person that's really qualified, and then they just don't get along with everybody, and it makes it really hard for everybody else, then it becomes a bit of a problem. So what we say, and we invite people to come and do a 1 week work trial or a 2 week work trial, and it's actually kind of like being part of the family. So if you're fitting in with the family and it feels like we're collaborating and it's all working, that's when the excitement generates, and that's when the kind of work qualification gets approved. And so I think that's what the long story of it is, just that people, your character and personal character with your work colleagues goes a long way, and I think it's important to respect that.
Would be either of the two from slightly larger organisations, do you want to add anything to that?
I'd say there's 250 of us at Scottish Woodlands. But yeah, I can definitely build on your point about size of organisation and the type of organisation that you want to work for. So I work for two forestry companies. One, the previous company I worked for, is larger, and it's owned as part of a large group, which is ultimately owned by a large Austrian company. And Scottish Wood. Then when I moved to Scottish Woodlands, it's an employee-owned organisation. So we're owned by shares that you can buy into as an employee, and the difference between the attitude and the people of one company to the other was significant, in that it's a lot. I found it a lot better at Scottish Woodlands because everybody's bought in, because it's an employee-owned organisation, and it's small enough such that you can phone directors and question company decisions that are being made, and you feel listened to. So absolutely, I think when you are applying for a job, have a look at the organisational structure, have a look at how it's owned. And it's not to say that large organisations aren't good, and they'll have merits, but definitely don't discount smaller companies. The second point I'd make is because of the fact that we're a little bit smaller, we're quite nimble in the way that we will recruit people, such that we can recruit people from a variety of skills backgrounds. So I work with people who have degrees, I work with people who have master's degrees, and people that have just got like a chainsaw ticket, but we've all got skills which, viewed together, really benefit the team as a whole. So, and I think a speculative question to a HR department or a well-launched email or a request or a constant request for a placement or some sort of experience can go a long way. So persistence in definitely is something that pays off. I managed to get a placement after sending about 4 emails every week for 2 weeks. And then ultimately the placement that I got me the job that I got in the first place. So, and yeah, don't feel bad for being annoying. It's good to be passionate.
Yeah, like Morden, I guess, is slightly bigger as well. We've about 130 to 150 people, but I would say that I know every single person there, so it is a very kind of friendly place. Again, placements are a really good place to get your foot in the door. So the way I came to Morden was when I was in my honours project during my undergraduate. my supervisor for that said, "Oh, have you considered a PhD?" And I was like, "No, I'm going to go home and work in the nuclear power station." That was my plan. And she was like, "You should have a look at this." And I looked and I was like, "Okay, that does sound like it was kind of written for me and my interests." So I applied, didn't get it. And then that was based at Morden. And then I ended up doing a 1-year research master's with that supervisor. And then the PhD came around again and I applied. But I'd had that link through my master's project and got to know some people at the organisation, and essentially got recommended to, that my attitude was good and that sort of thing, and that's how I got my foot through the door. And I know that you also don't have to have come from the degree, master's degree, PhD kind of route to work at Morden. You don't have to have a PhD. Like, if you want to, great, but there are other science roles and non-science roles that don't require that. Essentially, we've had a lot of people that do placements and then will come back as scientists or that sort of thing. We have an apprenticeship scheme, and essentially our longest serving member of staff is like 44 years or something. Like, people come to Morden and they stay at Morden, and there's a bit of a standing joke that even if you leave Morden, you've never really left. A lot of people come back because of the kind of environment, I think, that and the culture that it fosters, which, testament to it.
Thank you. Adam, you last.
Yeah, I just want to say something about your CVs and speaking in kind of practical terms. I have reviewed a number of CVs over the years and people applying for jobs. Put the really important stuff for the job at the top. It's a tough job going through loads of CVs and trying to find people who are relevant for the job. You want to do your best and read through them all, but sometimes you just don't have the time as an employer. Put the good stuff at the top. Send your CVs not just to your friend or your family to review, send them to someone who reviews CVs and who employs people to look at it and ask them what they think of how you have arranged and formatted the document. That's really important. And the other stuff is put your hand up and ask questions in these sorts of environments, even if you're scared, because every time you're scared and you put yourself through that, you're going to get better, you're going to get braver, you're going to get more confident. Put yourself forward for volunteering. If you don't have the experience, take up Lana's offer. Go out and do something like that. Take up the offer to be the chair, the vice chair, or the chair of the society that you're a part of. Be a community councillor. It's 2 hours a week to do something like that. Get involved with things, because all of that, even if it scares you, even if it's a little bit of extra work, that's what's going to help you stand out. As you come out of university, when you don't have all of that experience on a CV that other people might have. So that's the practical stuff I would really recommend.
Thank you, Adam. And we are drawing to a close now, but persistence has come up quite a lot. Don't, when you get your first letter of rejection, don't accept it. Go back again and again. Thank you for that about volunteering, because that's, prompt. You can volunteer at SEDA or SEDA Land. We're always looking for some. One thing that's come across again and again in these panel sessions is that all these people have such good job satisfaction. I think if you go into an ecological, environmental job, you're going to be surrounded by like-minded people, and you're going to get a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment from it, which is the most important thing. We now have 30 minutes more before the fair closes, so if you want to speak to any of these fantastic people about what they do, or go to their stand, this is your last chance to find out. As I say, we've got our website, we will put a lot of the information on it. Do give feedback. I haven't asked that in the other panel sessions, but I think that the Glasgow University are asking for feedback. This is the first time SEDA has done this. It might be the last, depending on what you all say. But it would really help us to know what you've thought of everything and how we can improve it if we do run it again. Right now, all I want to do is go and have a drink and then and some sleep. But the last thing I'm thinking about is doing this again. But finally, I'd like everyone to thank our fantastic panel, Lana, Edward, Ailey, Jason, Adam, Adrian, and put your hands together in thanks for their fantastic contributions. I hope you're all going going to go and do green jobs now.